point microphone at your mouth. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you to Wyatt, Adam and Megan and the staff. If I start naming staff, then I'll forget someone, but I appreciate all of your help. If I seem a little bit more flustered than usual today, I have just come from teaching my workshop, but that may also be why the room is so full, because I am taking attendance. I thought I would read some Southern poems and some Greek poems. I grew up in Atlanta and I live in Athens, Greece. It turns out, like in the UK, if you say Athens, Greece, people look at you funny. But I'm sort of used to doing that, as opposed to Athens, Georgia, Athens, Ohio. And I might read a bit of Hesiod, who is an 8th century BC or BCE Greek poet who kind of falls in between, I think, Southern and Greek, at least the way I've rendered him. Some of these maybe you'll have to guess which is which. So I will start with this one. Oh, and my daughter Atalanta helped me pick some poems out. She sat with me and flipped through the poems, and she said, which ones are you going to read? And I said, well, I'm looking through that now. And I asked for her advice, and she said, I think you should read the good ones. And then she smiled sweetly, but they're all good. That's why she gets away with murder. The man who wouldn't plant willow trees. Willows are messy trees. Hair in their eyes, they weep like women after too much wine and not enough love. They litter a lawn with leaves like the butts of regret smoked down to the filter. They are always out of kilter. Thirsty as drunks, they'll sink into a sewer with their roots. They have no pride, there's never enough sorrow. A breeze threatens, and they shake with sobs. Willows are slobs and must be cleaned up after. They'll bust up pipes just looking for a drink. Their fingers tremble but make wicked switches. They claim they are sorry, but they whisper it. This is my first book. Arrowhead hunting. I had to do a lot of this as a kid. We'd drive, usually we're driving to Louisville to visit my grandparents, and actually often driving through this part of the country, and we'd stop at these fields and, walk on these fields and hope not to get shot by the farmers and find various flints. Arrowhead hunting. The land is full of what was lost. What's hidden rises to the surface after rain in new plowed fields and fields stubbled again, the clay shards foot and lip that heaped the midden, and here and there a blade or flakes of blade, a patient art napped from a core of flint, most broken, few as coins new from the mint, perfect, shot through time as through a glade. You cannot help but think how they were lost. The quarry fletched shaft in its flank, the blood whose trail soon vanished in the antlered wood, not just the meat, but what the weapon cost. O hapless hunter, though your aim was true, the spooked heart, wounded, fleeting in its fear, and the sharpness honed with longing, year by year buried deeper, found someday, but not by you. Thought I had another yellow thing in there, but I didn't. Actually, I'm not sure where this one falls. Some years ago, it's quite a lot of years ago now, maybe it's like a decade ago or more, there was an article in the New York Times about this new poetic form. So of course I was like, oh, that's very interesting, called a fib, which followed the Fibonacci sequence in sort of syllabics and had been invented by this lawyer and so forth. And then they gave examples that were all terrible. And I thought, I can write the best fib ever in the world. Because the bar was really low. And also, of course, we know it's like, 0, 1, 0 plus 1 is 1, 1 plus 1 is 2. 1 plus 2 is 2 plus 3, 3 plus 5, 5 plus 8, 13, yeah, we go 21, sir. Anyway, it only went to 8, and then that wasn't very interesting. So you got to push it to 13, right? You've got to go to that really long line, and then because you're me, you've got to put in some rhymes. And then, since it's called a fib, it's got to be about lying, right? So, and if you listen closely, the first line is silence. Four fibs. 1. Did Eve believe or grapple over the apple? Eavesdropping Adam heard her say to the snake oil salesman, she was not born yesterday. 2. Miss, this is not bliss. Wisdom is not the abyss, but visceral innocence. Kiss the windfall of the world, she heard him whisper or hiss. 3. Not me, not me, cried all three. You shall creep the earth, and you shall labor giving birth, and as for you, you shall toil and sweat for all your worth. 4. Cross your heart and hope to die. Stick a needle in your eye. That is the awful oath of childhood, chapter and verse, genesis of the lie. So those are fun. Do some of those. You can do your cannabis, bene, and fibs. So it's true. I did used to come to Sewanee as a kid to the music camp. This was not really the happiest point in my life. I enjoyed Sewanee, but not music camp. But I can write poems about that. So this is called Two Violins. One was fire red, hand carved and new. The local maker pried the wood from a torn down church's pew, the devil's instrument wrenched from the house of God. It answered merrily and clear, though my fingering was flawed. Bright and sharp as a young wine, they said, but it would mellow, and that I would grow into it. The other one was yellow and nicked down at the chin, a varnish of Baltic amber, a one-piece back of tiger maple, and a low, dark timbre. A century old, they said, its sound will never change. Rich and deep on G and D, thin on the upper range, and how it came from the old world was anybody's guess. Light as an exile's suitcase, a belly of emptiness. That was the one I chose, not the one of flame, and teachers turned in their practiced hands to see whence the sad notes came. So my son never met my father, which is one of these, sad things of life. But he has become sort of obsessed with my father's pickup truck, which is kind of nice. I sort of feel like it maybe contains the spirit of my father. Everyone is obsessed with this truck. It's a long story. Country song. Death was something that hadn't happened yet. I was driving in my daddy's pickup truck at some late hour, the hour of broken luck. It seeped up through the dashboard's oubliette, clear voice through murk. The radio was set halfway between two stations and got stuck, but the words sobbed through, and I was suddenly struck like a gut string in the key of flat regret. The voice came from beyond the muddy river. You know the one that's cold as ice. Even then it traveled like a shiver through my tributary veins, but twice as melancholy to me now because I'm older than Hank Williams ever was. Um, there's a group of poems, and this is in Olives, there's a group of poems in here that got singled out in a lot of reviews for both praise and blame, mostly the latter. I don't know, it ticks some people off for some reason, but it's about, it's different poems about the Psyche and Cupid myth, which is basically Beauty and the Beast, but with more sex in it. Because usually you think in these stories there's sort of a maiden and she's made to go through all of these things, but actually Psyche, you know, she's not supposed to look at her husband who's invisible, but she, and he's the god of love. So when she does sort of cheat and gets a candle and looks at him after they've made love, and you know, he's the god of love. So he's like beautiful and gorgeous, but then he's upset and he's been wounded and she's broken her word. And her mother-in-law, her sort of Greek mother-in-law, Aphrodite, sends her on all of these awful tasks, you know, go get, you know, this impossible thing and that impossible thing. And the last thing that she's supposed to get is a box of makeup from Persephone in the underworld. And of course, she's not supposed to open the box, but she does. And anyway, it's a long story, obviously. But what really sort of I'm intrigued with is that she's pregnant when she goes down to the underworld, and she's alive. I mean, we think of these stories of male heroes going down to the underworld, but I was pregnant at the time when I was writing this, and the idea of, you know, pregnancy and death and going down to the underworld, you know, heavy with child, kind of, I thought was very creepy. So I'll read two of these from this series and not the one that everyone criticizes. But you can look it up. The boatman to Psyche on the river Styx. But I have one last errand for you, my poppet. That's from Apuleius, the Golden Ass. Only a few have come here still alive, heroes seeking immortality, lovers who refuse to grieve. They are found out by gravity. How they unbalance the scow with one foot still on the quay and the other stepping into the prow, while evil-smelling bilge comes seeping up through the planks, as it is doing now. The sorry hound is usually sleeping, 3 heads, no brain. But his job is keeping the inmates in. He has no reason to keep the living out. All will come here in their own sweet season. Perhaps you thought no one would notice you among so many, but you are not the shadow of a doubt. You are the thing itself. Your shiny penny will pay you passage, though it should be double. You are 2, if you are any. You quibble. Aren't you a double tug upon the earth and twice the trouble? Gravid girl, you're far gone. I feel the quickening, obscene here, where all frenzy is done, sickening, a thing like that, a specter that looms out of the queasy future, ticking and ticking like a kind of bomb, an X-ray developing in your chemical bath, your dark room. You wonder how a blind man finds his path over the swamp of hate, the river of wrath. My eyes are ultrasound. I echolocate like the pipistrelles that drop their slick of guano on the sloping slate, treacherous footing. Here's our stop. So, you're on an errand to the queen to borrow her beauty like a pot of makeup. It's true that she has stayed just 17. The sun can't spoil her looks. Her lips are stained with grenadine. And here there are only stopped clocks and no reflection. A hint. If she gives you a wooden box, yea, big, scarcely big enough for an infant, don't open it, though you crave a peek, a free sample. You say you won't, but the living have a flair for narrative. What if I tell you all the beauty ever worn by loveliness was borrowed from the grave and belongs to the unborn? So this is the last one in that sequence of 3, which I didn't read the first one. Persephone to Psyche. So I figure, you know, I have a lot of Persephone poems. So gotta have another one. Persephone to Psyche. Come sit with me here at the bar. Another Lethe for the bride. You're pregnant? Well, of course you are. Make that a virgin suicide. Me and my man, we try to spell a pharmacopoeia of charms, and yet when I am lonesome, Well, I rock the stillborns in my arms. This place is dead, a real dive. We're past all twists, rewards, and perils. But what the hell, we all arrive. Here, have some pomegranate arrows. I heard an old wives' tale above when I was a girl with a girl's treasure. The story went, soul married love, and they conceived and called her pleasure. In anhedonia, we take our bitters with hypnotic waters. The dawn's always about to break, but never does. We dream of daughters. So, get into some new poems. Actually, I think I'll intersperse that with my Hesiod. So Hesiod wrote two poems that we know of. The Theogony, which is about the family trees of the gods. Basically, Zeus is embroiled with everything. And a poem about farming and how to organize your calendar and justice and sort of everything. It's a very strange poem. They are also probably maybe even the very first poems in Western literature. I have this theory that they predate Homer. It's not my theory. I mean, other people have had the theory. But anyway, they're probably at most contemporary with and possibly predate Homer. And what's really wild about the Works and Days, and this sort of 8th century BC in Boeotia, which even in English is sort of, byword for back of beyond. This is, Boeotia, archaic Greece, so really back of beyond. It's also the first autobiography we have of a poet, a Western poet, who says something about himself. I mean, we know nothing about Homer at all. But Hesiod is like, well, I have a brother named Perses who is a disaster, and we are in a lawsuit over our parents' property. And my dad was a merchant seaman in merchant shipping, but did not do a very good job with that. And so we've ended up in this village called Askra, wretched village called Askra, at the foot of Mount Helicon, which is unpleasant in winter and miserable in summer. Never nice. These are some of the things we know. But the other thing we know about him is he has made one sea journey in his life, which before I moved to Greece, I just read all of the big words and names and didn't look at the map, because who does that? But it's a joke, because it's from the mainland to the island of Evia, which is, you can swim that. There's a bridge. You can drive across that. So it's really kind of a joke. I've made this one sea journey, but you Perses who are thinking about going into shipping, like the stock market, which is how our father was ruined, I can still give you advice because I'm a poet. But why did he make this one sea journey? Because there was a poetry contest and a poetry festival on Evia. And he goes and he wins the prize. So I love that the very first poet in Western literature is the prize-winning poet. This is like, things have changed since 8th century Greece, but not poets, not really. So he's very concerned about this dailiness. Again, it's been wonderful to be teaching with Mark Jarman. A great pleasure and honor, and I've been enjoying our workshop and our conversation, but the wonderful talk that Mark began us with about dailiness and work, because this poem is called The Works and Days. I mean, this is all about getting up and doing your work, and about poetry. Sometimes it's sort of advice like, don't clip your fingernails at the public feast, which is still sound. Some things haven't changed. Invite a friend, but not a foe, to feast. Invite the man close by, not last nor least. If something bad should happen on your farm, neighbors arrived half-dressed at the alarm. Kinsmen belted. A bad neighbor's a curse, as a good one is a treasure. Nothing's worse. Who has a trusty neighbor you'll allow has a share in something precious. Nary a cow would be lost, but for bad neighbors. So I think Frost actually takes that. Keep good track. When you measure from your neighbor, pay him back good measure too. Better if in your power. You'll find him steadfast in a needful hour. Don't profit wickedly. Ill-gotten gains amount to nothing more than woes and banes. Befriend a friend. Go meet the man who'll meet you. Give to a giver. Don't to one who'll cheat you. Give begets gift. Grasp, grudge. Forgive is breath, while seize is evil and her wages death. Who gives with open hands, though great the gift, rejoices in it and his spirits lift. But he who steals, trusting in brazen vice, though small the theft, congeals his heart to ice. Deposit even small amounts, but do it often and you'll find that they accrue. He talks about money a lot, but money hasn't been invented yet. So anyway, it's one of my notes. The idea, though, of money, yeah. He wards off sunburnt famine. Who can add to what he has? To store at home's not bad. Outside is risky. To take from what you've got is fine. To be in need of what you've not is woe to the spirit. Mind you, that's how things are. Here's some advice for Sewanee. Drink deep from new broached or from near drained jar. Thrifts for halfway, but stingy at the end. Ensure a settled payment for your friend. Smile on a brother, but have a witness. When trust and mistrust alike have ruined men, trust but verify. Don't let a woman mystify your mind with sweet talk and the sway of her behind. She's just after your barn. He who believes a woman is a man who trusts in thieves. May an only son shore up his father's walls, for that's how wealth amasses in the halls. May he die full of years and leave one heir, an only son in turn. Though Zeus might spare untold wealth on bigger numbers, more hands, more chores done, and a fuller store. But if it's wealth you long for in your chest, then do this: work on work and never rest. When Atlas' daughters rise, the Pleiades start harvesting, plow at their setting. These are hidden 40 days and 40 nights, but as the year goes round, once more their lights appear, and then it's time to hone iron tools. For plains and coastal dwellers, the same rules apply. For those who live far from the swells of the sea, and those who live in glens and dells, rich country. Naked sow and naked plow and reap your harvest naked. This is how you'll gather all Demeter's work in season, ripe in due time, and so there'll be no reason for you to beg in vain from door to door, as you've come to me now. I'll give no more, no extra, no count Percy's work. Again, work at the work gods have marked out for men, lest sick at heart with wife and kids you find you beg from neighbors and they pay no mind. You might get handouts twice, 3 times, but 4. Don't waste your breath by pestering once more, your words broadcast in vain. I'd urge you heed, think how to clear debts and not starve. You'll need a woman and an ox to start a life, a plowing ox, bondswoman, not a wife, one who can follow oxen and prepare the household's need and management with care, lest you go begging and be turned away, and fruits of your labor dwindle day by day. Don't put off till tomorrow or till later. No barn is filled by a procrastinator. So that is shortly forthcoming from Penguin Classics. It's only taken me about 6 years to do 800 lines, so I don't think Hesiod would really approve of me. It's like 2 lines a week. But there was also an introduction. Maps. So I also have a new book of poems coming out soonish that I'm excited that is also happening. And I've gotten tired of the books in sections. I'm not doing that this time. So I'm just going with alphabetical order. Well, Auden's done this. I think that's a good example. So I'm excited about this new book forthcoming. There are some Hesiod poems. Hesiod is the first author that tells us the story of Pandora and the jar. So, although it is interesting because he actually, I sort of messed that up in this poem, but he actually doesn't tell, no one tells Pandora not to open the jar. That's something added later by Erasmus, who confuses the Psyche and Cupid story, or conflates that with the Pandora story. But yeah, so instead of translating Hesiod, sometimes I was writing poems about Hesiod. So that slowed things down. A jar. The washing machine door broke. We hand washed for a week. Left in the tub to soak, the angers began to reek. And sometimes when we spoke, you said we should not speak. Pandora was a bride. The gods gave her a jar, but said, don't look inside. You know how stories are. The can of worms denied. It's never been so far. Whatever the gods forbid, it's sure someone will do. And so Pandora did, and made the worst come true. She peeked under the lid, and out all trouble flew. Sickness, war, and pain, nerves frayed like fretted rope, every mortal bane with which mankind must cope. The only thing to remain, lodged in the mouth, was hope. Or so the tale asserts, and who am I to deny it? Yes, out like black-winged birds, the woes flew and ran riot, but I say that the woes were words, and the only thing left was quiet. It turns out I do write a lot of, descent into the underworld poems, and I write a lot of Alice in Wonderland poems, and I'm like, oh, it's the same thing. But I think I do tend to reread Alice in Wonderland more than Through the Looking Glass, which is, more cerebral and less fairy tale-ish in some ways. But there's some very weird stuff in there that I'd forgotten about, like the forest where things escape their names. It's very creepy. And my name, A, I don't have my name tag, but A actually stands for Alicia, which is, of course, diminutive of Alice. Alice bewildered. Deep in the wood where things escape their names, her childish arm draped round the fawn's soft neck, her diffidence, its skittishness in check, merged in the anonymity that tames. She knits her brow, but nothing now reclaims the syllables that meant herself. Ah, well, she need not answer to the grown-up beck and call, the rote-learned lessons, scolds, and blames of girlhood, sentences to parse and gloss. She's untwinned from the likeness in the glass. Yet in the dark ellipsis, she can tell, she's certain that her name begins with L. Liza, Lacey, alias, alas, alas, alike, alone, and at a loss. I'm also very fond of various creatures that live in the underworld and in various underground places. I think I used to say in interviews that it was about depression or death, and then I did realize that for large portions of my adult life, I had lived in basement apartments, which doesn't, obviate the other things. But so I think almost every book of mine has some kind of Minotaur poem in the labyrinth. Art monster. My mother fell for beauty, although it was another species. Ox-eyed, dew-lapped, groomed for sacrifice. She had to devise another self to put herself in, something inhuman, or beauty could not possess her. O didal mechanics, she grew huge with hybridity, rumor ripened. I was born to be amazed. She fascinated me with cat's cradles, spun threads out of my hirsute hair shirt. I was fed on raw youths and maidens, when all I wanted was the cud of clover. I was named after my stepfather, dispenser of judgment. No one called me my mother's son. Minotaur, they said, oh Minotaur, you are unnatural, grotesque. A hero will come to slay you, a hero who jilts princesses on desert islands. It is heroic to slay, to break a heart, to solve the archaic puzzle in the basement, demonster the darkness. I await this patiently as I bow to the yoke of making, scratching this earliest of inscriptions on a potsherd down here in the midden, writing left to right, then right to left, as a broken beast furrows a field. Yeah, so I'm kind of reading these in alphabetical order. Luckily, I'm not going to read the whole manuscript, but that's what's going on here. Colony collapse disorder. And I put in Iliad 2.87 through 2.90, where there's a wonderful simile of the armies pouring forth, and it's as bees come out of a hollow rock, but then I kind of go somewhere else. Just as a swarm pours from a hollow rock in one long beeline for the wild time, alighting in clusters on this purple and that, but is stricken with a mass amnesia that disorients the compass of the sun, and they forget the steps to traditional dances, and each helicopters into a different dimness, taking their saddlebags of sweetness with them, and the hive goes dark, the queen is left to starve, and the drones humbug the whimper of the world, and the palace falls to ruins, broken into by vandals who would loot the golden stores left in the brittle wax hexameters, just so. One of the things I have done, though, as I've been putting things in alphabetical order, that mostly worked, but occasionally it didn't, and I changed the title. Because I can do that. So this was Gentleman Crow, and now it's Crow Gentleman. It did not fit in the G's. Pacing to and fro along the autumn shore, among the wrack and reek, with your arms clasped behind your back, and sporting your gray frock coat trimmed in black, and your black hat, and your lean, long-legged stride up and down the strand, perusing the headlines of the tide, casualties and statistics, futures, stocks, the 1,000 natural shocks. You clear your throat, inspecting the ink-black seaweed tossed among the rocks like obsolete typewriter ribbons, rusty widow's weeds, scanning the flotsam for morsels cast up by the remorseless gossip of the seas, Amanon screes. How elegant you are, everyone concedes, Gentleman Crow, with your gimlet gaze, your sardonic beak. How omnivorous, how sleek. Life is a joke you crack, wry and amusing, and death a dainty snack. I think in all my books I have poems about vermin and parasites. And I'm a parent, so lice. And for those of you who are keeping count, these are in sort of haiku measured stanzas. I know they're not haiku, but 5, 7, 5. It starts with a hunch, watching her scratch unthinkingly behind her ear. You wiggle a hitch loose along a burnished shaft. It's just as you fear. Now you're picking nits with a fine-toothed comb, no less. Lousy metaphor. How pediculous. But now it's personal. It's chemical. It's war. No quarter, no truce. You lord it over their dead, their pedantic puce. Undo the unborn. Murder is meticulous. That star her dark head divide in sectors, lest anything be overlooked. Doubt's niggling itch. Mankind will never be rid of them. Like the poor, they're always with us, vectors of nothing but disgrace and shame, charmless as they are harmless. So this was Sestina-like. I've read it here before, I think. But now it's like the Sestina. It fit in with the L's. But mostly it all fell perfectly together. Anyway, I had taught the Sestina for years and years and years, as one does. It's an exercise. And I think I used to have a spiel about it was about obsession, because you have the 6 repeated repetens that come in this mathematical permutation and all come together in the last little 3-line bit. But then I realized after reading a bunch of these that I'd assigned that was just wrong. And, you can't obsess throughout the sestina. You just run out of things to say. I realized the real problem with the sestina is it's 39 lines, and that's kind of a long poem. And you have to have something, a juxtaposition or a narrative. So it's not, we repeat ourselves all the time. So sticking in repeated lines is not the problem, or repeated words. So you'll listen for the 6 repeating words. Some of you already know where this is going. Now we're all friends. There is no love but like. A semi-demi-goddess, something like a reality TV star look-alike, named Simile or Me Too. So we like in order to be liked. It isn't like there's love or hate now. Even plain dislike is frowned on. There's no button for it. Like is something you can quantify. Each like you gather's almost something money-like, token of virtual support. Please like this page to stamp out hunger, and you'd like to end hunger and climate change alike, but it's unlikely like does diddly. Like just twiddles its unopposing thumbs ups. Likewise props over scarecrow silences. I'm like so over him, I overhear, but like he doesn't get it. Like, he's like, it's all okay. Like, I don't even like him anymore. Whatever, I'm all like, take like out of our chat. We'd all like flounder, agape, gesticulating like a foreign film sans subtitles, fall like dumb phones to mooted desuetude, unlike with other crutches. When we use like, we're not just buying time on credit. Like displaces other words, crowds cuckoo-like endangered hatchlings from the nest. Click like if you're against extinction. Like is like invasive zebra mussels, or it's like those nutria things, or kudzu, or belike redundant fast food franchises, each like more like the next. Those poets who dislike inversions, archaisms, who just like plain English as she spoke. Why isn't like there literally every other word? I'd like us just to admit that's what real speech is like. But as you like, my friend, yes, we're alike, how we pronounce, say, lichen, and dislike cancer and war. So like this page. Click like. So I think I'll read a couple more, maybe 2 or 3 more. Placebo. That one I didn't have to change. I used to teach Latin, so one of these things you can just point out. Placebo is just Latin for I shall please. Placebo. No can do. I am doctor not of medicine, but Latinity. I am the future, singular, indicative, the first person. What do you take me for? If is a real condition. If I'm a pill, then you are double blind. What you don't know can't hurt you. Spoonful of sugar, it's all in your head, this dendritic alchemy of pain. Nothing works. I have been writing a bit about, the refugee crisis in Greece. I've been strangely gotten kind of involved in it in odd ways. If you'd asked me 2 years ago, would I be spending Thursdays teaching Syrian and Afghan kids baseball? I would have said, what are you talking about? And those of you who know me are like, you can't teach baseball. But it does turn out that I know more about baseball than the average person from Kabul. So some of it, I think I was just very upset, especially in 2015 and 2016. There were just so many drownings, people coming over in these boats, and my children swim in this water, and these are children like my children, and I was very upset about it. I didn't really know how to write about it without, that's obviously, are you exploiting? Are you? So I found the epigram was really useful. It's tight, it's sharp, it has a bit of irony, it has a little bit of distance. So these are some Aegean epigrams, which itself has an epigraph. We beheld the Aegean blossoming with bodies, which is from Aeschylus's Agamemnon, upon an unseaworthy wooden vessel. Call it a tub, call it a casket, and all their eggs tucked in this basket. The woman from Leros said, small bodies wash ashore, sea-chewed, a few days dead. I don't eat fish anymore. From an autopsy report of an unknown drowning victim, Icaria, female, 9 years old, found wearing a blouse and a pair of sweatpants patched with Minnie Mouse. Duties. Which one seems more chilling? Copenhagen willing to confiscate cash and bauble from Mosul, Homs, and Kabul, or smugglers making a killing, palming Charon's obel? Fathomless. A fathom deep, the body lies beyond all helps and harms. Unfathomable, unfathomable, the news repeats like charms, forgetting that to fathom is to hold within your arms. Word problem. The 21-foot-long dinghy can hold up to 30 people max. If you squeeze on 64, wave a 9mm at their backs, and 6 before 2 nautical miles out into international waters. Which do you not save first? Infants, sons, mothers, fathers, daughters. Paradox. Of the ones that happen to die, the little ones and the old, by hypothermia or drowning, all died of cold. Nothing to declare. As if in a sea of red tape, the faulty life jackets tossed, there is no custom house, no guards at the border these have crossed. Proposed epitaph for drowned refugee children. Go tell the bureaucrats, passer-by, that all is ship shape, fine. The stuff that trickles from your eye is only a little brine. There were a lot of just lists that would come over the transom. I'm just going to read this one and one last poem. There were lists that came over the transom on Facebook all the time when there were like 5,000 people suddenly in a tent city in Piraeus. And because I'm a poet, I would read those lists just became poems to me, because they are, and narratives, because the lists were about what people needed. So at first it was cold and they needed sleeping bags, and later, maybe they needed diabetes medicine, and later you needed things for pregnancy and for newborns, because life goes on in a tent city, maybe especially in a tent city. And it was just very moving. And one of the things that came across was just a volunteer guide. And so this is kind of a found poem. Yes, Alicia Stallings does a found poem. And it's just Appendix A, and I've tweaked it very, very little. I've tweaked it a little bit for length and a little bit for ordering, but it's mostly just a found poem. Appendix A, useful phrases in Arabic, Farsi, Dari, and Greek. Found poem from the Guide to Volunteering in Athens as updated for March 17th, 2016, which is right about when the borders to the rest of Europe closed. Welcome to Greece. Thank God for your safe arrival. Greeting after trip. Hello. Good morning. Good evening. Good night. Thank you. You're welcome. Please. I don't understand. I don't speak Arabic, Farsi. Slowly. Come here. You're safe. Are you wet? Cold? Yes. No. My name is, what's your name? He, she, it is. We, they are. God is with the patient, will make people laugh. Give yourself a break, comforting words. Free, no charge. Refugee, volunteer. Foreigner, friend. I am hungry, thirsty. Food, water. Does it hurt? Sick, pregnant. Mother, father, brother, sister, child, family. What country is your family from? Pharmacy, medicine, hospital, doctor. Tent. Sorry, it has run out. We do not have it now. New shoes only if yours are broken. Wait here, please. I will return soon. Follow me. Come with me. Come back in 5, 15, 45 minutes, 1 hour, quarter, half hour, half day, today, tomorrow, yesterday. How many people? Sorry. Stay calm. One line, please. Next person. And I will close with a new poem. This is the newest poem. And it's an S. So that worked out well because it went towards the close. Swallows. Every year the swallows come and put their homestead in repair and raise another brood and skim and boomerang through summer air and reap mosquitoes from the hum of holidays. A handsome pair, one on the nest, one on the wire. Cheat, 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 the two conspire to murder half the insect race and feed them squirming to their chicks. They work and fret at such a pace and natter in between with clicks and churs They lift the raftered place, seaside taverna, with their tricks of cursive loops and Morse code call, both analog and digital. They seem to us so coupled, married, so flustered with their needful young, so busy housekeeping, so harried. It's hard to picture them among the origins of myth, a buried secret, rape, a cut-out tongue, two sisters wronged when there's no right, till transformation fledges flight. But Ovid swapped them in the tale, so that the sister who was forced becomes instead the nightingale who sings as though her heart would burst. It's Ovid's stories that prevail, and so the swallow is divorced twice from her voice, her tuneless chatter, and no one asks her what's the matter. These swallows, though, don't have the knack for sorrow, or we'd not have guessed. Though smartly dressed in tailored black, spend no time mourning, do not rest. One scissors forth, one zigzags back. They take turns settled on the nest or waiting on a perch nearby to zero in on wasp or fly. They have no time for tragic song. As dusk distills, they dart and flicker. The days are long, but not as long as yesterday. The night comes quicker, and soon the season will be wrong. Knackered, cross, they bitch and bicker, like you and me. They never learn, and every summer they return.